reason you feel lonely isn't because you are alone, but because nobody truly sees you and understands you. Today, we are talking about the missing ingredient in deep connection. Welcome to the Connection Catalyst podcast, episode number 30. I'm Karolina, the Connection Catalyst. That's why I'm super passionate about connection, because I'm here to help you connect deeper with yourself, others, and the world around you. And most people don't actually want more attention, they want connection, but they are so confused whether how to create this. We are relationally dependent as human species because we are born, and when we are born, we cannot do shit, right? When we are a little baby, we need other people to take care of us. And that makes the need of connection a survival need. And the baby is able to go without food longer than without being touched and hugged. There was a research done about this because we crave connection. It's something that like fulfills us, and it's a basic human need. It's one of the core needs. So that's the reason why when you, for example, break up with someone, it doesn't matter if you don't eat or sometimes don't sleep, right? Because it's like the emotions of missing the connection are kind of like more important in that moment than normal other needs like sleeping or eating. Yeah. So connection is something that is crucial and foundational to our well being. That's why I would like to tell you what are the building blocks of connection, and maybe one of the further episodes give you a few tips and step by step processes that you can do to build deeper intimacy and connection. The real connection is not only something that magically happens when you meet the right person, it's a skill, it's a practice, it's constantly choosing to truly see each other and one another and allow ourselves to be seen as well and to be understood for who we really are. And it all begins with presence. So, one of the greatest gifts that you can give the other person is just to be with them, just to give them your full attention. So, imagine that you're speaking to the person that is close to you, but they actually scroll Instagram while you're speaking to them. That's not going to make you feel connected. It's not planning what you're going to say next when the person is expressing themselves. It's not waiting for your turn to speak while they are speaking, but just really being with them, wanting to listen, and giving them a message. What you're saying is important to me. In this moment, you matter. And think about the last conversation that you had with someone who looked you in the eyes and was really there for you while you were expressing yourself and really remembered what you said, genuinely showed interest in what you were saying, and gave you their full presence. How did you feel after such a conversation? Probably really freaking good, right? Because this is what heals us. This is what we often didn't get as kids. True unconditional presence from our caregivers or even peers. So you don't feel good after such conversation because someone gave you a piece of advice. It's because someone gave you their full undivided attention. And that's what's healing. And that's what feels good. And that's what creates deep connection. One of the biggest mistakes that people make in relationships that I see, and this is especially for men because they are quite logical and sometimes not very attuned, is to try to solve people instead of understand them. So when someone shares some pain with us, especially emotional pain, many people, especially men, immediately jump to advice, solutions, fixing the problem, explaining, and so on. But often, what this person needs is just to be listened to, just empathy, just to get validation, and they don't need you to fix it. They just need you to listen and to be present with their emotions. And it often comes up in couples, right? Especially if a woman is super emotional and the man is very logical because she shares something, for example, like, oh, I had a really hard day. And then the husband would be like, oh, yeah, you should stop worrying so much. And she's just like, what the hell? Like, I didn't want any advice right now. I just wanted to express how I feel. But if he said something like, oh, that sounds actually exhausting. What caused you to feel that? Tell me more about it. Then the approach is empathetic. Then she can soften up because the first answer creates more distance. And the second answer creates more intimacy because you want to understand the other person. Intimacy is into me, see. So when we really want to understand and see where this person is coming from, when we want to be super empathetic with them and feel what they feel, in a way, we can imagine to put ourselves in their shoes and then imagine how it would feel from their perspective. Because, for example, if someone had a lot of childhood trauma with their mom and then they are a relationship with you as a woman, and they come up with some kind of triggers and stuff that is happening, if you know them, if you see them, if you understand them, if you're compassionate, you're really intimate with them, you might not get as triggered when they project their mommy issues onto you as you would if you didn't develop this intimacy with them, if you didn't see into them. And also, it's better to be curious about someone, especially in dating, rather than impress someone. Because a lot of people come into the conversations, especially in dating, being like, oh, how do I get them to like me? But then it goes to shit because that's not the right intention, the right energy that you're coming with. The better question to ask when you meet someone is like, oh, who is this person? How can I get to know more about them? And then the connection grows because curiosity is like a fuel to the engine of connection. People feel connected when they feel genuinely known and understood for who they are. So if you ask more open ended questions where you let the other person express themselves, tell you more about their life, this creates deeper connection. So the questions that can be asked to create deeper connection are: what's something you're very passionate about? What lights you up? What has been the biggest lesson of your life or the biggest challenge of your life, for example? Or what do you wish that more people understood about you? Right? These are very deep questions. Or maybe, what are you currently struggling with? Or when was the last time you cried? What moved you? These are the questions that really go beyond the surface level. And these are the questions that I usually use on my dating events when I run them, because I run dating events, soulful dating, it's called. So these questions really go deeper and they instantly create more connection because they instantly go into the vulnerability rather than just surface level. Oh, where are you from? What do you do for work? And things like that. And it's worth mentioning that intimacy and connection, sometimes when we say intimacy, we think sex. But of course, sex can be very intimate and sex can be very connecting. But intimacy itself means to allow to be seen and to see into someone's inner world. It's about everything. It's about your fears, your dreams, your struggles, your truth, all your parts, right? So, of course, a lot of people, if they think, oh, I want to be intimate with my partner, they just think of sex. But there is so much more to intimacy than sex. And very few people actually put energy into truly knowing each other. A couple might live together for like 10 years, but they still don't even know what the other person is afraid or how they are insecure or what are their hopes or what is their emotional reality or landscape or whatever else. And that's why they might still feel lonely either look, even if they are together for many, many years, right? So as I mentioned before, what creates very deep connection is vulnerability, which a lot of men struggle with because we are taught from childhood as men that, I mean, not we, because I'm not a man, but you guys are, that men don't cry and you shouldn't be a pussy and stuff like that, right? So then we have problems in relationships Also, because women really want your vulnerability, man. We really want that. But then there's so many blocks and feeling like, oh, I shouldn't say this because I'm gonna be perceived as weak, or I shouldn't cry, or whatever else, because then I'm not gonna be a real man and stuff. But we cannot experience real deep connection when we are hiding something. Most people want intimacy, but they have no idea how to get there because they are terrified of vulnerability. And then it comes the problem because there are walls that we build around our heart and just generally in our energy field to keep the pain out and also to keep the love out. Because if we build these subconscious barriers based on hurt, based on how we reacted in the past, usually as kids, then we cannot fully open up to someone because we have all these like internal limiting beliefs or experiences that taught us, oh, you shouldn't trust men, you shouldn't trust women. And then when we want to connect to our partner, like we don't actually feel that we can because there is all these blocks, right? So a lot of people could be, for example, scared like, oh my God, like if my partner knows the real me, they would judge me, they would criticize me, or I would be punished for being myself, right? And all these experiences come from somewhere. They come from childhood experiences, they come from trauma that happened many, many years ago. So now our task as the adults is to release these emotions, release these things from our body that don't serve us in adult relationships. Ironically, the only way to discover whether someone can love the real us, not the mask, not the filter of perception that we try to show them to get them to like us, is to show them the real you as you are, to be authentic. Authenticity is so much hotter than performance. And that's what people don't do because most people actually date as performance. They just show the version of themselves that they think that will be appreciated and loved and accepted. But then months later, it becomes a problem because the person that decided to be in a relationship with you suddenly discovers that after a few months, after the masks drop, after the honeymoon effect is over, the hormones of love are more gone than before, suddenly the relationship changes. And it's like, my God, this is not who I chose to be with, right? At the beginning, we had pink glasses and everything was so sweet. But then, if we are not shown the real person from the get go, then it's in a way like we are lied to. And in my view, it's better to be rejected for who you are rather than loved, but for who you're not. So eventually the mask will fall off anyway. So you might as well just show the real you from the beginning in dating. Another thing worth mentioning is a lot of women have this belief that they are going to change men for the better. And maybe if now he's not emotionally open or available, they will fall in love and us, and then we will change them. But you can't create connection with someone who does not want to create connection. Okay, so many people spend years, especially women, trying to convince someone emotionally unavailable to love them and to open up. But it's not gonna happen. I hate to break it to you, but it's not gonna happen. You cannot force intimacy onto someone. You can only invite it. And if you want intimacy, you better find someone who is open to see into you in the way that you want to see into them. Because even though we like to live in a fairy tale, especially people brought up on Disney movies like me, we're gonna meet the man and he's gonna change his whole life for us and so on. Romantic movies, comedies showed us that, right? It's not true. If someone does not want to change, they are not going to change. And I used to have the savior complex as a teenager where I was meeting someone who was taking drugs and I thought, oh yeah, if he just falls in love with me, he will stop taking drugs. And he did fall in love with me, but he didn't stop taking drugs. So trust me, this is not gonna work, all right? So bottom line, if you keep reaching and contacting someone, but someone is still withdrawing all the time, the solution is not to try harder to connect with them. is to find someone who actually will want to meet you halfway and will want to connect with you as well. So, the very fast way to create deep connection is to find a common ground. Humans really connect through shared experiences. So we naturally feel closer to people who share the same values, interests, struggles, goals, and dreams and visions for the future. So if two strangers suddenly discover, oh, I also like ice skating, or oh, I also love meditation, or oh, I also lost a parent, even though this is like connecting on some traumatic level, instantly the conversation becomes deeper. Because then, in a way, we have this sense of belonging with the other person because they have gone through something that makes us feel understood for what we've gone through because we share the same experiences. So we can always look for the common ground when we meet someone, look for this thing that we could do together. And of course, it's better to connect on something that is positive, but sometimes even something quote unquote negative that was like a challenge or struggle in our life can be a way to deeply connect with someone. Because I personally feel way more connected to people that showed me their vulnerability, that I held crying on my shoulders, that I cried on their shoulder, than with someone who I just have surface level conversations, even just positive conversations about life. If we want to deeply connect with someone, we need to demonstrate for them that we really care. Because most people very much love other people, but they don't show it, right? They don't say words of affirmation. They don't do things that makes the other person feel loved. They just, yeah, don't know how to show the other person that, hey, I really care about you, I really love you. And it could be something very simple, like remembering about someone's birthday, which I really suck at, but I have all the birthday of my close friends written out in my calendar. Or it could be like following up with someone, or it could be like remembering what the other person said in a previous conversation, or it could be just sending a message like, oh, I think about you and I really love you. Or it could be like appreciating the qualities that this person gives you. Like, thank you so much for being in my life. You really bring a lot of joy and love into my existence. And I'm so grateful for it. Or other things, right? Like even sending to your partner like a sexy picture, being like, oh, I can't wait to be in bed with you tonight, or whatever else, right? But just showing your love, expressing it to the world. And if you struggle with it, then you need to go through all these emotions that block you from expressing it. For example, fear of being rejected, or shame, or whatever else that is sitting on your throat in a way, because when we can say something, our throat is reacting, it gets tense and stuck. So anything that you feel that is the internal block from saying words of affirmation and expressing love in this way needs to be reprogrammed. I already talked about how to work with your emotions in one of the previous podcast episodes, so go check it out if you don't know how to do it step by step. Another point that I want to mention is about empathy. What is empathy? In a way, it's the ability to enter someone else's world, to put ourselves in their shoes, to be attuned to them, so to feel what they feel. Because most people listen from their own perspective, through their own perception and filters of reality. But connection, especially deep one, can happen when we temporarily step out of our perspective and into the other person's perspective, so that we can really feel them and see them and understand them on the deepest level. Not in a way like, okay, here's what I would do from my perspective, but more like, okay, what is the experience like for them? An example could be that someone says, oh, I've never felt close to my family. So if you want to make them feel worse, you can say something like, oh, my family was amazing, actually. Then the distance is created. Boom. But if you want to connect with them, you can be like, oh, that actually sounds really lonely. I'm sorry to hear that. And notice how the first response creates separation, but the second response creates understanding and oneness. Speaking of loneliness, it's not really about the absence of people, because some people feel that, okay, loneliness is when you are alone, but that's not true. The deeper loneliness is when you are surrounded by a lot of people and yet nobody really knows you, nobody really connects to you, nobody is empathetic, nobody really cares, and nobody really is able to see who you truly are. So, yeah, loneliness isn't the absence of people, it's actually the absence of connection. And there are three pillars of loneliness. If we want to go deeper in it, we need to release the fear, the shame, and the guilt from our body to not feel lonely. Because these are the three pillars that actually affect the feeling of loneliness the most in our body. Because the guilt feels like there is something wrong about me. The shame is like, oh, I'm doing something wrong, and the community or family or society will kick me out for that. And it's something wrong that I do. And then the fear is like the separation that we create between us and the other person. So if we want to have less loneliness in our life, we need to, first of all, work with all these emotions, ideally doing like trauma processing stuff or inner child work or, some kind of regression to all these childhood experiences that created these feelings, the feeling of loneliness included. And we also can do parts work that I also explained in one of the previous episodes, between the part of us that feels lonely and the part of us that makes this part feel lonely. So, two parts. One is lonely and one makes the first part lonely. Yeah. So, when we resolve the connection, the conflict between them, then the integration can happen, and then we can feel less and less lonely. Because if there is a part of us that feels lonely, there is probably like the inner child, the vulnerability, the loneliness, and there is probably an internalized caregiver, our parents or someone else, that in childhood made us feel lonely. So I spoke a lot about it already. Maybe I will leave the rest for the next episode. But let's just sum it up that connection is not created by being super interesting for people. It's actually created by being interested in others. And it's not created by perfection, but it's created by authenticity, being yourself, and then really finding people who vibe with who you truly are. And it's not creating by fixing people and solving their problems instantly, but it's creating by understanding them, being empathetic towards them. And perhaps the deepest form of love is simply saying, I don't need you to change and to be different in order for me to be here with you. Because at the end of the day, what most people are actually craving and what they are looking for is not more money, status, success, or even more romance. They really seek to experience being fully understood, seen, loved, and accepted for who they are. Thank you so much for being here with me. If you want to know more about me, you can go to my website, karolinakuraj.com, Karolina with K, Kuraj.com. I have different offerings there. If you feel like you like my vibe and you want to connect deeper, you can find me on other social media platforms as well. And for now, let me know in the comments if you feel that you experience deep connection in your life, and if not, why? Or maybe you have some other tips and tricks for connecting with others that I would love to hear about, and send this episode to someone who needs to hear it. Thank you so much again, and until the next time.